Hello my beautiful friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Liv or Olivia if you are new here. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. In this video we are going to be chatting all about the fantasy books that I'm hoping to read or start by the end of the year. For those of you that are new here, you may not know that I used to be a fantasy girly only. When I started my channel back in 2019, the only thing I ever read was fantasy. I am 100% loving this reading journey I've been on in the past couple years, where Bookstagram, booktubers, friends have influenced me and got me to try brand new genres I never thought I would try. Things like horror and romance, and while I do enjoy those, I'm really finding that I like those elements within fantasy. My roots are really in fantasy, and I guess you could call this video coming back into my fantasy era. I can tell you right now, for the rest of the year, or at least going into next year, I'm gonna pretty much be reading a lot of fantasy. That doesn't mean I'm gonna be eliminating all the other genres. I just really miss fantasy. I've read a couple fantasy books recently, like A Study in Drowning, that have really sparked my love again for fantasy, and that's all I want to read right now. That being said, I have a lot of fantasy books to catch up on because I feel like I've gotten so behind in the time that I've been dabbling in other genres. I feel like there are so many like older or backlist series I haven't read, or ones that have come out that I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing, and I don't know how in the world I haven't picked it up yet. So this is going to be a video of me reminding myself why I love fantasy and reminding myself of the series I need to kind of catch up on, but also maybe just to give you guys some fall fantasy recommendations. I definitely have a variety of different fantasy genres here, but there are definitely some spooky books for fall. But we are just going to talk about the 21 books or series that are at the top of my priority list, or that have been on my radar for quite some time, that I would love to read sooner rather than later. Starting us off with some good old Sarah J Maas, I have with me Heir of Fire. I started this series earlier this year and I binged 3 different Sarah J Maas books in the span of about a week or 2 weeks, and I was loving it. I was having the time of my life with this series, and I don't know why I didn't continue. I should have just kept on that streak and binged the whole thing, honestly. But now some time has passed and I'm struggling to remember what I even read in Crown of Midnight. So I have this one, Assassin's Blade, and then I'll finally be on to Queen of Shadows, which is the one I'm the most curious about since it is a lot of people's favorite. I'm sure most of you know what Throne of Glass is about. Either you've read it or you've at least heard about it at this point. Next, I have A Court of Silver Flames. I'm not gonna lie, I thought I had a bookmark in here because I did read the first 250 pages when this came out. I binged the first 3 books and then this one came out shortly after, but at the time I had never really read romance and I kept telling myself this was too spicy and I'm never gonna read it, until my friend Kendall came along and said this is her favorite from the whole series, especially some of the characters in this book, like Cassian. I know I love Cassian, so I do need to complete this book before Crescent City 3 comes out, or at least I would love to. I'm hoping to finish Throne of Glass and this one before Crescent City 3 comes out, and then I can say I've finally read all her books. But honestly, I feel like time is ticking and I'm just not gonna have the time. So if anything, I will definitely be completing the series or catching up with this series by reading this one. Speaking of Sarah J Maas, I have heard this book, These Hollow Vows, be compared to ACOTAR, I believe, which makes me a little bit skeptical because this has very big shoes to fill. But one of my closer friends recently read this and said, why aren't more people talking about this? And that honestly is the only indicator I needed to finally pick this one up. He thinks he wants me forever, and part of me is considering it even as I'm betraying him. I'm the thief who's stealing from the kingdom he'd have me rule by his side. And then there are things I feel for Finn. The way my power surges when he's close, the attraction I don't want but can't deny. Would Ronan want me if he knew any of that? Even if he did, doesn't that prove I don't deserve him? So obviously we have a little bit of a love triangle going on here, which makes me a little bit skeptical because I don't love love triangles, but I'm willing to give this a chance. This does sound amazing, and I love that she has some type of magical or superpowers. Another big throwback, I'm sure for a lot of you, maybe some of you don't know, I haven't even read this series, that is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. I tried reading the Mortal Instruments series. I only made cried halfway through the third book, decided it just wasn't for me. I was really bored. At the time, I wasn't really into vampires and more of like the paranormal or urban fantasy, but this series I've heard nothing but amazing things, and honestly I just want to get on the hype train with everyone else. I feel like this is a reoccurring series that always comes up, so this is hopefully going to be on my priority list for the next series that I read for my backlist takedown series here on YouTube. I just have so many popular things I haven't read that I would love to vlog and get my reaction to, and I'm just very curious about what my personal thoughts are going to be. I honestly don't know much about this one at all, and I'm kind of surprised I haven't been spoiled because this has been around for ages. The next book I have is one that is going to be perfect for spooky season. I am 100% putting this at least on my November TBR. I believe this one is also adult, so just FYI. It's called The Foxglove King by Hannah Whitten. I don't know how this one became on my radar other than I kept seeing a lot of booktube fantasy girlies talk about this one. His eyes were on her. She wasn't sure how she could tell across so much space, but she knew with a pull in her gut and no hint of a doubt that the Sun Prince was staring right at her. In this gilded, gothic, and romantic epic fantasy series, a young woman's secret power to raise the dead plunges her into the dangerous world of this sainted king's royal court. I have been holding on to this one. I think I bought it back in June or July, but I've been holding on to it for spooky season. I think he's actually called the God of Death, like she falls in love with the God of Death, but the cover is super creepy with like the skull. It's super dark and kind of scary. I'm really hoping and praying for a 5-star with this one. Next, I have Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This series also kind of blew up. It's really short though. It's less than 300 pages, and I think the series is complete at this point. It is 4 books. It is an adult fantasy that's been compared to Bridgerton, but with fae, but I've also heard that this does read a little bit young adult or even middle grade, so I hope that means low on the spice. It's difficult to find a husband in Regency England when you're a young lady with only half a soul. Our main character Theodora was apparently cursed by a fairy or a fairy king. That's basically all I know, but if there are vibes and the writing is descriptive and vibrant just like Bridgerton is, I feel like I could really get into this series. Next, we have Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brando Sando. This is going to be my 3rd attempt at reading a Brandon Sanderson book. I read Skyward and actually really enjoyed that one. I gave it 5 stars a few years ago, but I recently read Mistborn and gave it 3 stars. So as you can probably imagine, I'm a little bit scared because his ratings have been up and down for me. I'm hoping this one is a little bit higher stakes. I think also that it's a standalone. I've heard it's like Princess Bride, but with pirates. He wrote this for his wife, which immediately sold me. That is just adorable, and the inside is beautiful. So it was definitely a cover buy for me, but hopefully that means the story is going to be just as good. The next throwback series for a lot of us is the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. I have yet to read a book by Stephanie Garber, but so many people tell me I'm gonna love this one because there's a competition, there's a sister dynamic, it's a circus, it's fantasy. I mean, what's not to love? I also really just love these covers. I literally know nothing about it. I've heard some of the names like Scarlet and I think Legendary of some of the characters, but other than the character names, I know close to nothing. So I'm definitely going into this one with a blindfold on, but I think that's gonna make my experience even better. I will also be hoping to vlog this one for another backlist series takedown video. I also have Belladonna by Adalyn Grace. I did not realize that she was the same author as All the Stars and Teeth, which is like a pirate story that I've owned since like 2019 or whenever it first came out. I've had such high hopes for that one, and now I have even higher hopes for this one because I've heard amazing things. I've heard it's like a dark romance, gothic. I think this girl falls in love with Death himself. I've heard the romance is just top tier. This is actually the next book I have on the docket or on my TBR that I'm going to be picking up this weekend because I cannot hold out any longer. Everybody says this is like a dark secret garden retelling, and honestly there's nothing more I could want in a book. The next book I have that definitely fits your spooky season is Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. What's really put this one up higher on my TBR is I really love her writing. I'm actually still in the middle of reading the Atlas 6, but I can already tell I'm going to love it enough to want to continue on picking up her books. But basically in this story, our main character is trying to sell a haunted estate or a haunted house, and there's so many other characters that come into play. There's like a poltergeist and a vampire. I don't know if this is romantic. I literally have no idea. This sounds like such a unique concept, but these end pages though are so beautiful. I cannot wait to finally get to this one. Next, I have One Dark Window, and I believe the second one just came out, which immediately made me put this on my top priority for this list. This sounds amazing. It is about a maiden that falls in love with a monster, but the monster apparently is inside her head, which sounds really weird when I'm trying to explain it, but it's just talking about how the monster might be her. She's just plagued by this curse. It's like a dark romance fantasy. So it is adult, so I'm not sure what other kind of themes are going to be in this one. Very, very excited to read this one and then pick up the second one. I also have The Scarlet Veil, finally, by Shelby Mahurin. I was a little bit skeptical to pick this one up because it is vampires, and vampires aren't really my thing. Besides that, I am very much looking forward to this. I think it actually follows or has some characters from her other series in Serpent and Dove. I don't know if I'm going to continue on with that series before I get to this one, but all I know is it's a vampire story, it's Shelby Mahurin, and I just needed this because this book is absolutely stunning. The next two books I am going to mention together because they are the same author, but that is Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young and also The Unmaking of June Farrow. This one I actually have no idea if it's a fantasy book. It just talks about a mystery, and I think there's a sister dynamic in it. I know this one for sure I'm going to be reading because it blew up last year. It sounds like everything I could ever want in a fantasy, and of course if I end up giving this one 5 stars and loving it, I'm probably gonna immediately pick this one up. Like, let's be honest. A deeply atmospheric story about ancestral magic and unsolved murder in a second chance at true love. I love the second chance romance trope. I love a good murder mystery, and I've heard such great things about the atmosphere specifically in this book. So I'm very excited to finally make this a priority read, especially for November. I feel like that's going to be a pretty good month to get to this one. The next few books I actually do not own physically because they're new releases and I haven't picked them up yet, or they haven't come out yet this year, or I am hoping to buy them but I just haven't bought them yet. But these are books I would one day love to own and read, starting with AAR Wilder Magic by Allison Saft. To be completely honest with you, I don't know what this one is about. I know there's actually ghosts in it, and I know it's been compared to like Full Metal Alchemist or something that has to do with alchemy, but other than that, I remember several of my close friends picking this one up and reading it last year and really enjoyed it and said it was perfect for fall. I mean, the cover looks very fall to me, so I'm hoping to get to this one as well sooner rather than later. Next, I have Starling House by Alex E. Harrow, whose writing I really love and enjoy so incredibly much. I've only read 10,000 Doors of January. I do have Once and Future Witches that I still need to read. I think she has a couple of short like fairy tale novella stories that I still also have not read. But when I heard this one was going to be a haunted house theme, I was like, are you kidding me? Sign me up. I don't need to know anything else. I just want to read this one, especially with a cover like that. Are you kidding me? I did not get it from Book of the Month because I really want the super pretty edition from Barnes & Noble. I think the end pages look a little bit different than the typical like first edition print. So I'm very much looking forward to this one. This is going to be super high on my list, hopefully for October. Next, I have more of like a cozy fantasy book that I've never seen anyone talk about, but it sounds so cute and just so fun. So I am going to read you the synopsis here real quick. Explore its many rooms, pick something nice off the shelf, and have a little read by the fire at the Cozy Quill Bookshop. Running from strife in her homeland, Marabella Waters becomes the new owner of the fabled Cozy Quill. After finding squatters on her property, she employs Asteria, a giant barbarian warrior woman more accustomed to swinging an axe than opening a book. Together, the odd couple must make a success out of the bookshop and survive a dizzying procession of seasonal festivals. But the local evil noblewoman has other plans in mind. Threatened with being run off the land, Marabella and Asteria must use their wits to outsmart Lady Millicent and keep their business open. Along the way, the whole town lends a hand, friendships are forged, and mysteries are revealed. This story sounds so cozy and so adorable. It sounds more of like a low stakes, cozy fantasy with a bookshop and a barbarian. I mean, sign me up. This sounds so cute. Going off of the the cozy fantasy vibe, we also have Bookshops and Bone Dust, which is releasing, I believe, early November. I can't remember the exact date, but I love Legends and Lattes. Like, there was such a good reason for this one blowing up last year. It was such a simple story, but I loved the friendship dynamic. I loved the whole theme of the story, and I believe this one is actually going to be more of like a prequel, which is kind of interesting. We have our main character Viv, who's like an orc, so I'm wondering if we're going to get a little bit more of what she was like before she started like her coffee shop. So I'm very intrigued by this one. I think it's definitely going to be another big one that blows up that everyone's going to be reading this fall. The next book I have on my radar is Fear the Flames, and the main reason this one popped up on my radar is because I loved and adored Fourth Wing, and this one is another dragon story. I just knew that I needed another top tier dragon book in my life, and this one has been making its way around BookTube. I've had a lot of people tell me that it's like a childhood friendship to lovers, and other than that, I know absolutely nothing, but this one just sounds like it's going to be another perfect fall read. Speaking of Fourth Wing, you guys know Iron Flames is 100% already pre-ordered. It's on my radar. I will be reading it the day it comes out. As soon as I can get my little hands on a copy, I'm going to be binge reading that story. I cannot wait to see what happens. It ends on a huge cliffhanger, so I definitely do not recommend flipping to like the last page and looking. I'm just so ready for more dragons, more dragon like humor, dragon training, and that's part of the reason why I want to read Fear the Flames, because I feel like that's gonna hold me off until Iron Flames finally comes out. And last but definitely not least, we have Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. I actually have no clue if this one's young adult or adult because Goodreads says it's both. I thought this was her first adult like debut, but I could be wrong. This is another reason why I want to read Clockwork Angel or a couple of her other books before I get to her new book, because I don't have very much experience with this author, and I think it would be good to like make my way up reading her older books before getting to like her newest book. Two outcasts find themselves at the center of world-altering change in the start of a riveting epic fantasy series. I believe one of the characters is an assassin and another one's an orphan, and I think they team up to do something or go on some type of mission. I really don't know. I'm probably just making things up here. I am going into this one pretty blind. I have high hopes that this is going to be another one that just really takes off, and I have a feeling everyone's going to be reading this one at the same time. Alright, my friends, that is it for this video. That is it for my extensive list of fantasy books that I would love to read or get into, or ones that are just at the top of my list going into the end of this year. There's definitely a lot more I could put on this list, and as I was sitting here talking about these, there's more I kept thinking of, but if I only read half of these before the year is over, I would feel great about that, because like I said, I'm definitely getting more into my fantasy era. It's been kind of interesting thinking this whole time like I'm going into the month of October. That means horror books and witchy books, but honestly all I want to read is a good backlist fantasy young adult series. So we're just gonna hold tight to the mood reader in me the rest of the year and see how many of these I can get read. But before you leave, let me know if you have read any of these series, and if I need to bump them up on my radar, definitely let me know. Let me know if any of these were 5 stars for you, because you can easily convince me to pick one of these up. But most of all, thank you so much for watching this video and hanging out with me. If you've made it this far, leave me a little fairy emoji for fantasy, because I love fairies. Thank you for supporting my channel. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video.